So we're good? Or
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're live.
Okay,
So we are connected to Zoom.
all right.
We're fiddling with it to make it full screen, but
Oh, okay. Do you
But-
want me to, should I wait another minute or two?
I think you could probably start. because
Okay.
We're,
Who
I mean,
knows?
it looks like the 8:30 service went a little long, and so we may have some people coming in,
Sure.
but yeah.
I'm fine with that. That's
Yeah.
okay, then we'll go ahead and start. Well, I'm so glad everyone's here for part 2 of Honest Advent. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrea Laszlo, and I'm looking forward to telling you about waiting and hope today. And I love how when I have a theme, it seems like the week before, I keep seeing all these things that fit in with it. So before we begin, and welcome to everyone on Zoom as well. I thought we would settle in the spiritual practice called breath prayer. And for those of you who were here last week, you're breath prayer experts. But for those of you who were not, it is a very simple practice of simply being intentional with your breathing, usually while repeating a word, a phrase, or a verse, whatever you might choose. And the one I've chosen for today is very connected with the theme of waiting and hope. And also for those of you who have interfaith interests and curiosity.
Joyce, we all set up with.
Sorry, trying not to be distracted. It's connected to the Buddhist practice of non-striving. And so this verse is, be still and know that I am God. I imagine many of you are familiar with that verse. So the way we're going to do it today is similar to last week. If you were here last week, I'm going to read the verse, and one reading is an inhale and an exhale. And then I'm going to gradually shorten it until I just say the word be. And when I say the word be, that's an inhale and an exhale. And then I'm going to take us back out.
So I just hit
until-
view in full screen.
Yeah.
So-
Sorry, I'll just give them a minute.
It didn't do it.
How come
It's because that crazy trackpad, I think.
Okay, all right. Okay.
All right, so before we do the practice, I'd like to read to you some of the other translations of this verse. And if one or more speaks to you and you want to write it down on the paper I gave you, feel free. Different translations can speak to us at different times, and it can just be a really enriching practice to sort of know what those are. Stop your fighting and know that I am God. Cease striving and know that I am God. Be at peace in the knowledge that I am God. That's enough. Now know that I am God. Let go of your concerns, and then you will know that I am God. Be quiet and know that I am God. Be still and see that I am God. And then my personal favorite just right now is step out of the traffic. Take a long, loving look at me, your high God, above politics, above everything. So all you need to do is breathe and follow the sound of my voice and focus on whichever one of those feels right to you. And you are invited to close your eyes, but if that doesn't feel comfortable, you can just kind of look down just so you're not distracted while we do this practice. So let's begin by just settling our bodies into wherever we are sitting. And just take a deep breath as you notice the contact points of your body on your chair or wherever you are sitting. And noticing your feet planted on the ground, grounded, and connecting you to the earth. Take another deep breath. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Be still. Be still and know. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am God. So this is a practice you can return to anytime. It can be really beautiful before a difficult conversation, or just anytime you want to center your body, mind, and spirit. So raise your hand if you love to wait for things. Yes, it's really hard. Whether I think about just waiting in line at the DMV or waiting for something much bigger and more important than that, it's really difficult. And I'm wondering if anyone has thoughts on what is it about waiting that made you not raise your hand?
I feel controlled.
Yeah. And when you say it that way, it's almost like it's a force outside of you. Yeah.
I prefer immediate gratification.
And we're kind of used to that too.
It's not efficient.
Yeah.
There's too much ahead of you and too much to do and too much to get into to be able to stand in place.
So those thoughts, and sometimes ruminating thoughts, right, of what else I have to do. I don't want to wait. I do think a lot about the control and the feeling of not being in power. And I do think that that is in us. So before I talk a little bit about the some Christian perspective on waiting, I just wanted to share a personal belief on what can be an advantage in practicing more of a waiting posture. And I think that waiting before we respond, whether it's to an email or something someone says or something we read in the news, gives us more of an opportunity for discernment. And that can bring about more thoughtful response, more right action, and I think in that even some greater peace. But it's a practice in humility, which is not easy. And a pause like that, whether it's a moment or a day or a week or a month, doesn't feel as powerful. Immediate responses, can feel and anger at times. I know therapists talk about this, that feels more powerful than waiting or sitting with feelings of sadness. So something that can help, I think, is learning to practice waiting with hope. And Paul says in 1 Corinthians that the church as a people should be characterized by faith, hope, and love. But love is the greatest of these three things. And why is love the greatest of those three things? I read a really interesting perspective that I wanted to share with you that ties in with what we're talking about. And it's from author Tish Harrison Warren. She's a priest and an author. And she says faith will eventually become sight, and hope will eventually meet its object in eternity. So those will be taken care of, but love will always, we will always have love. We will always want love, always be love. And so we won't need those virtues in eternity, but we really need them now. We really need faith and hope now. So I think it's interesting to ask, how do we cultivate a virtue like hope? Do you have any thoughts on, well, I want to live with more hope. So how might I do that?
In one sense, it's a practice or discipline. So kind of looking at your like virtue ethics or the things that you want to feel you in a way practice. Because there's kind of the idea that there's a reciprocal experience of mental disposition and having actions that would fit that mental disposition, then you end up having that sense that of continuity between what you're thinking and how you're acting. And so a hopeful action or a decision for a hopeful perspective.
I really, that resonates with me. Yeah, very, very true. And I thought of, when you were saying that, embodying it in a way, instead of just trying, especially in this culture, right? We go the mind all the time. I'm a head person. So I need to just be more hopeful, but that doesn't really always work very well. I love thinking about, I don't know if any of you have ever done yoga, but just that, even if you haven't, just the idea of a yoga practice, and you never become this fully realized yogi. It's always a practice. So I think it's that way with hope.
I think it's also choices that you make along the way. For instance, I can tell you, I watched for a while a TV series that I found really funny, but I also started to feel like it was hopeless. And I'm like, I don't want, that's not how I want to spend my time and what I want to give myself. And so, I kind of still wonder how that series ends.
Right. You could guess Google.
But I just felt better and more hopeful by just saying, no, yeah, I'm not gonna spend my time with that.
That's really practicing discernment too. You realized I like it on the one hand, but I also recognize these feelings I have when I watch this show.
It didn't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me.
I think for the hope aspect, one thing I realize is hope for me for the longest time has been a future thing. When I do this and this and this, then I can have hope. And I realized that that's crazy, because it's the carrot on the stick that's always out there, and I never quite get to the point where I can say I'm fully embracing and living in hope. I think it's something I have to. Burn is a little bit strong, but do you guys follow what I'm saying? It's
No,
like,
I love that. It's always sort of in the future
Right.
instead of living in the present in it, and not needing something specific to happen in order to embrace hope.
Yeah, which is in contrast to accepting it as, intending it as a discipline, as a personal discipline in the here and now, right? So it's not an if then, or I'll be okay if. It's my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus, right? And so living in that now intentionally. Yeah, I love this. This is helpful.
If the church is supposed to be the hope of the world, right? I mean, that's what we've called ourselves, right? And that's not,
Right.
that's not here and now. So thank you. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
a good framing.
Yeah, it is a good framing. I love the power of a good reframe. What you said, Josh, is exactly what I wrote in my notes about practice and just this whole idea of embodying it, of finding ways that could be different for each of us. It's not going to be the same, that help us to live in greater hope. And I also do want to give a quick disclaimer, because in churchy settings and in other settings too, it can start to become like, oh, you know, it needs to look pretty. It needs to, teacup talk of God, as some poet said that, I think. And I just want to really say that that is not what this is about. And I think it's human.
That's very Episcopalian though.
What is,
Teacup talk.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of new to the Episcopal Church.
No, I'm joking, but I'm not. I mean,
Yeah.
we were very polite, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Our former rector used to say, we know which fork to use.
Right, the
Right.
salad
Yeah.
fork is,
Okay. It's good to know. Yeah, I believe in the right to be Frankie sometimes. So we have to embrace that too. So practice, what are some practices, like you mentioned, Josh, that do help you to live in greater hope? Does anyone have a thought on something specific that leads you to live in hope, helps you to live in hope?
I don't know if this is what you're saying, but I find with taking up on what you said, Joyce, the media that I consume, if it doesn't leave me, if it doesn't point to truth and leave me with a sense of hope, I don't want to put myself in there. I think good art is about hope, about truth.
Yeah, I was gonna say music too. I feel like, well, I went to your concert last week. That was beautiful and it was very uplifting, but like this time of year, I like listening to the Christmas portion of the Messiah, and I find, you know, that like really good music can be very uplifting and help focus on the positive and you know, hope for things. You know, I think it's been difficult for me these last few weeks after the election to feel hope. And so, you know, I have to make choices of how I'm going to see things and how I'm going to respond.
I really like how you both pointed out that it isn't just what we choose to engage in, but also what we choose not to engage in. So that is, so
I feel it's a time and a place, because it sounds like whatever TV show is very nihilistic. And sometimes I find that very cathartic, because it's truer to my inner disposition or the things I'm going through. And so there's a bit of reflection there. But as soon as like that catharsis goes away.
Right, and that's
And
how,
right.
and that's how that was.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, at first it was kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, but I think at first I saw hope for this family. And then it was like, no, they're never,
Never.
yeah, they're not gonna come around.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah.
so is hope become more, you know, like in the room gets darker, the light shines brighter, right? So like in the time we're in, like hope becomes more important, or more, you know, if you're feeling like it's getting darker, then the hope is brighter. I don't know, I'm wondering if that's the case, you know.
Or you long for it more.
yeah,
Yeah.
And the feeling isn't necessarily what it
Yeah.
is, you know. But you know, I think about hope, and you know, if we kind of come, for me, if I just get another dose of Jesus. I'm like, I'm fortified. I'm like, yeah, thank you. You know, and remembering just, you know, who Jesus is, what he is, how he calls us, then to me, that's a hope, kind of shot in the arm.
Well, and he did practices of hope himself. We talked about, right? His prayer, taking time, spending time with
Absolutely.
friends and enjoying a good meal. So one might say, I'm not saying he needed it.
He did some good human things.
He did some good human things.
Yeah, for me, it's
Absolutely.
also maybe a question of where you source your hope.
How do you mean?
You know, where do you go for hope? So even the disciples, you know, had hope, but part of it was ill-founded. It was Maccabean. It was, they wanted to overthrow the government, you know, and Jesus was trying to, you know, of course, make sure that they understood that it was God and him, God incarnate, that was the source of hope.
Well, that is so interesting to raise that now, right?
Yeah, well, it is for me, because there's so many things out there saying, hope in me, you know?
Mhm. Well, a lot of people's hope is in the political system and
Exactly.
Jesus,
That's the kind of thing
and that's
we're
what they
talking about.
thought. They wanted Jesus to overthrow the political system, and he said, I'm not here to do that.
And we can source our hope in cynicism or nihilism, or we can source our hope in light.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. I'm gonna fake it till I make it. With practice, you know, just practice it.
Well, and there is some, you know, I like that. I mean, maybe it isn't really fake, but I think
Yeah.
catchy phrases are helpful.
That's
So
right.
there is an
How it was
aspect of that,
intended,
right? Yeah, there is an aspect of that in there. Some of the things that I just sort of made note of, we talked a little bit about this last week, but living into the church calendar, the rhythms of the church year, however that might look for you, I think is a practice of hope. You know, the liturgies, the music, the prayers, also the practices, and this fits for Advent as much as Lent, fasting, giving, serving, are ways of practicing hope. And I think it's really important as we live out the church seasons in those ways to ask ourselves what is called for this season, because every season is going to be different for each of us. And I see a tendency at times, and I can do this, of we're just sort of adding on. So we do all the stuff we always did, and then we like add on new stuff, and that just makes for an exhausted people. So it's okay to switch some things out. You don't have to always do more.
I think it really struck me when you, the verse I wrote down, the translation I wrote down, when you said, be still and know that I'm God, and you read all those translations, was cease striving and know that I'm God, which is kind of what you're saying. It's like that adding on the, like, I've got to accomplish this. I've got to do that. I want to do, cease
Absolutely.
striving and know that I'm God.
Yes. God's God and we're not, as John Baez says. It's a song.
I like Advent, probably my most favorite season of the church year, because it took me so long to, it took me a really long time to understand the whole church was about Jesus. But, I think I got that now. But, it just is the marvel that God broke in to human existence to be with us in Christ, in Emmanuel. That is easier for me in Advent and Christmas than in Easter. But just that is the cause for hope, because no matter how dark it seems, it's good to not be Pollyanna-ish. You just be in the dark, sit in the dark. The people sat in the darkness. But to trust that God did break in Jesus, and this is what God does. And I think that's how I practice it when I'm able to practice it, is that in any given day, God is breaking in.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm striving, or I'm doing something and I'm not paying attention. And so, that's what reassures me that, yes, it's totally screwed up now, totally powerless to change anything that you think should be changed. Or many things that you think should be changed. But God is breaking in. That's hopeful to me. It's kind of a dark hope, maybe, I don't know.
I feel like there's something that fits with the prophets. So the people who sat in darkness
Yeah.
have seen a great light. And Jesus's teachings to his disciples were about how do you interact with your neighbor? How do you go and show the love that you've been shown yourself? So it's God who does the inbreaking. So I would see the be still and know or stop striving as you can't bring fruition to this hope. So this kind of leads to something else I was thinking about is hope. Oftentimes we see, I don't really hope that this can change anything, so why do I do it? Well, when really it's the action itself that's good. So I feel what you've been feeling the last few weeks, but almost immediately one of the people that I respect said we would do the same work no matter who's president. We still have a job.
That is so
That's right.
true.
That's
That
right.
is so
So
true.
no matter how long, I think it's the churches as Christians, it's our great conundrum to say, why is the second coming constantly pushed back, right? That is our existential question. Can't answer. So, but then we have to say, but you still have to do the thing that we're supposed to do, bringing light in ourselves. And so that hopeful aspect is not something that I can like one of those flashlights where you can spin the thing and then it lights up like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes and no. It's like, here are the actions that I'm supposed to do. Yeah, how do I treat my neighbor? And then it's almost like the light is it's directly related, but I'm not making that light happen. That light is part of the process that God has created inside of humans. So knowing that it's God who does the inbreaking, that's not me, but I can I can live out my discipleship, interacting with my neighbors. That kind of generates a little bit of hope.
And I love everything you said, and the practices can create, as you said, we can't do it ourselves, but the practices can create where we're receptive, where we, because I think if we're not intentionally engaged, then we can miss it. God's trying to break in, but we're not seeing it. Not aware.
There's so much about hope that's quiet
Mhm.
to me.
Mhm.
Thinking about what you said about the church year and thinking about how that relates to the rhythms of nature and how much they speak, but how quietly, with the different seasons. And I remember being at the beach one time with my sister. Her husband had been critically injured in a terrible car accident, and we didn't know if he was going to live. She had 2 little kids, and just talking about waiting. He was in a coma for 7 weeks. And she said, just watching these waves pound on the sand, it's like they're going to keep doing that. I can count on it. There are some things about the future that are pretty certain.
Yeah.
How comforting that was.
I keep thinking of Emily Dickinson's poem, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings a song without the words and never stops at all. And I think it has some of the, like what you're talking about.
That's beautiful.
But then, of course, Woody Allen followed up with a book called Without.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Yes.
I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we shouldn't read too much Woody Allen when we're looking for hope.
Yeah.
But I think maybe sometimes we do feel without feathers,
Sure.
and
And
Yeah,
it is
that's
good to
part
connect
of
with
our
someone,
experience,
expressing that. I was going to mention nature as I think a hopeful practice is to go outside, or even if you can't, looking out the window at creation is an act of hope. And we are nature. So it's so important, and there's so much that we will see. That we talked a little bit about this last week, I think, but the image of the seed, just the seasons of the year, the knowledge that winter is winter, but we know that spring follows. We don't know when exactly, but we do know that it follows. There's something deeply comforting in that, even when there's no words.
Well, even a day like today gives me hope, you know, like I'm not walking my dog when it feels like 7 below zero. The sun is shining,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, it does. It definitely does.
It's going back to Woody Allen, though. I mean, I think that humor is important for hope, right? I mean, I think we're talking about some very serious ways to get at hope, but also, I mean, I think silly and playful things are there. I think there's an avenue there.
Mhm.
And what's better than like just a good, just laugh,
Right, irony.
you know? It brings joy, and that can lead to hope.
It absolutely
hope.
does. And even in dark times, people find ways to do that. We've seen that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and that absolutely is true.
That might be how humor works, is that you name the dark, you name the tragedy, you kind of say what is the unspeakable, but you know, it's kind of like you're saying, and that is somehow funny when you hit it right on the, that's really, I never thought about how, you know, like how do comedians figure out how to do all their stand-up?
I don't know if any of you, I heard this a little bit, This American Life yesterday, where it's about like a singing, and somehow there was the guy is singing and joking, and it turns out that the woman, her son has died. And they turn it into kind of a song and this litany, and everybody's laughing, but also feeling the joy. So it's like naming it.
Mhm.
And it's like the child's name was Nash, and they were singing about Nash, and let's give Nash a shout out, so it turned it around from like this really dark moment to
Yeah.
joy.
Mhm.
And the mom said, I'll never forget, that gave her so much, just goodness to keep going. But anyway, it was kind of like naming it. It was a humor, and then it got dark, and then it got turned around.
Literally making fun.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
This time of year, I have a particular arrangement of O Come, O Come Emmanuel that I've always wondered about. It's beautiful. It's done almost like a Gregorian chant. And so it's a minor key, and it's not hopeful. It's just, it's centuries of waiting, actually. But the thing about it is, the very last chord they play at the end of that track is a major chord.
Yeah.
So it's been minor for the entire thing, and then there's this quiet little major chord, and I just love that parallel.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's cool. Despite all of this, there is an ending that's happened.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Any other thoughts on hope before we move to a practice? Well, we're going to do Visio Divina, which means divine seeing in Latin. And it's simply a slow, thoughtful contemplation of a piece of art or photograph, or you could even do it with something in nature. So you could really do it with anything that you see. And we're going to, I'm going to ask you to select one of these 2 works up here. I also put a couple of them out just in case it was hard, because you may want to go up and look in a moment. It's up to you. But you're going to choose one. And before we do the practice, I just wanted to let you know, these are both by Scott Erickson, who wrote the book Honest Advent. And I just wanted to let you know just a little bit about each work. Mary Comforts Eve, which is that one, is actually, the piece is actually by Sister Grace Remington, and Scott reimagined it. So it's not his original idea. But he adapted it, and it's a painting imagining these 2 matriarchs of faith meeting and what that might have been like. And the other painting, the one that says in, is an original by Scott, and he wants us to know that the Greek word kataluma originally referred more to a guest room than a hotel sort of room. And so obviously we don't know exactly what happened, but there are some theologians who speculate that Mary and Joseph were staying in a place with relatives, but no, that it was full and no one would give them their space, which has its own connotations. But anyway, just thought I would share that.
Holidays.
Pardon me, sorry.
Relatives at holidays.
Exactly. Exactly. So much there that we could talk about. So I'm gonna just pray for us, and then I'd like you to select one of the pieces, if you haven't already, that you would like to focus on. And I'll tell you what to do in a moment. So God, we just pray that you'll help us each to find a piece and a prompt that nourishes our soul, and that you'll meet us with the insight that you know we need rather than what we think we may need. Amen. So you're invited to get up and get closer to the work if you want to, but you don't have to. You can use one of the copies on the table. And what I want you to do first is focus on the first little thing that you see in your chosen image. So a tiny piece, what draws you in, a small detail or vibrant color, whatever it is. And I want you to just stay with that, that small piece of the work for the moment. And then you're going to slow your breathing. And I want you to just consider your thoughts about this small detail. And consider any feelings you might have about this detail in the piece. And then you're invited to write down, I gave everyone pen and paper, what do you notice in this detail or this focus? And I'm going to give you 5 minutes to that. Just 3 minutes. I didn't realize we were getting close. If you're still writing, that's okay. I'm just going to add into it that if you feel ready, you can now take in your image as a whole and ask yourself how the image makes you feel. Does it provoke any questions? Does it evoke any memories? Invite God to speak to you through what you've noticed. And then you're also invited to write down anything that comes to mind and heart. And I'll give you a few minutes to do that. 1 minute. Is there anyone that would like to share anything they noticed? And if you choose to share, you don't have to share everything you wrote, but anything that came to mind.
I first noticed the picture of Eve and Mary. Because I was glancing over at the one in front of Vicky and thought that somebody had put a coffee cup on it.
But then I saw it up there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I realized that was a halo.
Oh.
And, you know, around Mary's pregnant belly. And I, when you said the title of the piece, it totally flipped my perspective around Mary comforting Eve. And and thinking of, you know, how I don't think of Eve as responsible for the fall, but Eve certainly gets and and Mary saying, you know, let go of your burden. I'm God has found another way. I'm coming with Jesus and
Oh, that's beautiful, yes.
I noticed that Mary's foot is on top of the snake,
Yeah.
which I didn't notice when I first looked at it.
And it's really wrapped around you.
And then,
What is that? What is that?
there are remnants of the evil. There's the apple, there's the snake. It looks like Eve's face is very sad to me. She's not smiling. Mary has a little bit of a smile on her face as I saw that. And she's the one actively reaching out to Eve. She's holding her hand. She's got her other arm out. And to me, it just says, yeah, this has been bad, but there is hope.
Yeah.
There is a way to look forward with positive feelings.
Yes.
The serpent shall bruise your heel and my servant will crush his head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something about seeing that represented in an art image that's really powerful. Love that.
I didn't think about that one, but you know, it's like, it's a redemption picture. And usually that is not very framed in a feminine perspective. That.
Yeah.
I don't know, really, that the whole Eve and the whole feminine, you know, the whole need for all the negatives that have been placed on women to be given hope.
Yes, the divine feminine,
Yeah.
instead of it being Jesus comforts Eve,
Yeah.
which could
Yeah.
have been the piece. Did
Yeah.
anyone, oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I've got my own reinterpretation of this. I kind of did both, because I also see kind of negative implications if I'm coming from just like an art critic perspective. Like Eve the barbaric and Mary the civilized. Eve the young and immature and foolish, and it's Mary who's the matron because of her offspring. The progeny from, you know, so it's like this is the child that really matters, whereas Eve's children don't. is
Mm.
otherwise part of chronology of just getting to Jesus.
Mhm.
So there's like the immature young Eve, because she's stupid and foolish, but don't worry, I'm having the child that'll actually matter. So actually that jumped out to me pretty strongly.
And Mary's hardly, I don't know, that's not a common depiction of Mary.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so right, I mean, she's young, like if we're taking the narrative, like
Right.
she's a child also.
Right.
She's
Right.
she's very-
Like 12 or 13.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that jumps out at me, but
Huh.
the thing that stuck with me where I focused was Mary's profile. That's kind of, it's bowed a bit, so somebody can say her gaze is looking at, is trying to draw the reader to her womb, but I see it as just like dignity. I like the embrace. There's an autonomy between the two bodies.
Mhm.
I see Mary as very much going and being an active embrace toward Eve and saying, she's almost pulling her
Yeah.
and saying, come to me.
Mhm.
And then the other is she's touching her elbows bent. So I see a very soft caress of Eve.
And a connection with both
Mhm.
arms that
Yeah.
interconnected, almost like they're forming a circle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we probably have to, get off Zoom, right, Laura?
Yeah, I was trying to stall for as long as possible, but they are complaining. I
I'm sorry, Terry,
apologize.
about that.
But thank
thank
you
you so-
all. Y'all have a wonderful, and y'all please feel free to stay. Obviously, I'm just gonna mute this. But thank